The Captain America trilogy is not just the best Marvel trilogy. One might say it's one of the best superhero trilogies ever made.
Really good. He's the best.
Each movie feels high stakes and pivotal to the greater MCU, and all of them are some of the best of the franchise. Needless to say, Sam Wilson, he had some big shoes to fill. This only makes it all the more disappointing and unsatisfying when he and his movie never really manage it. So what is the secret ingredient that this film is lacking? What has the old Cap got that the new one is missing? Many will try and paint this film as a colossal failure, but the fact of the matter is, Brave New World is less a dramatic train wreck and more of a desolate, dry desert of boredom. It's never ambitious enough to be anything more than that. In fact, I would have preferred if this fourth entry swung for the fences and suffered just an embarrassing miss. There is nothing offensively bad here, but nothing all that good either. In the words of one of my favorite shows,
welcome to eternal mediocrity. Welcome to the media place.
Look, you mostly sucked, but then you did this one good thing. I mean, I still think we should get you.
The movie strives to be a Winter Soldier-esque thriller, but forgets that thrillers have to be, thrilling. The mystery is humdrum and often boils down to long-winded exposition scenes with telegraphed plot beats that the audience, they're going to see coming long before any of the characters do. It's no wonder that the entire film had to market itself off that climatic fight with Red Hulk, despite the fact that, it takes up a grand total of about 5 minutes at the end of the movie. There's no meat on this bone, and the inclusion of Red Hulk in the marketing material means that the big bad's master plan is essentially completely spoiled from the get-go. Gee, I wonder, could the villain be planning to unleash the president as a Hulk, just like they showed in the trailers?
Would be no way of knowing.
Now, it's not like the Winter Soldier also didn't telegraph some of its surprises. It too revealed in the trailer that Cap's old friend Bucky is the titular villain, spoiling what could have been a mid-movie surprise for non-comic readers. Yet Winter Soldier still offered plenty of other surprises in the film, such as the return of Hydra, the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D., and many established characters being revealed as Hydra operatives.
Hail Hydra.
Don't expect any kind of shocking revelations here. But I wouldn't call the thriller elements the secret ingredient anyways. Although the Russo brothers leaned heavily into that genre for the first two films, Steve's origin story is a very different animal. The first Avenger is often seen as the weakest of the three, but it did a good job of establishing the main character and setting up Steve's satisfying arc as a morally black and white Boy Scout, one who goes from being a company man to a fugitive. It was also inspired by Indiana Jones more than anything else. This arc, it's what made this goody two-shoes character more interesting. It was less about him changing and more about him resisting change when faced with problems of the modern day.
It's getting damn near past time for you to get with that program.
This isn't freedom. This is fear.
Now I know what you're thinking, and no, the secret ingredient, it's not Steve himself either. Though lacking the Captain America, it's not really helping matters. And that's not me slamming Anthony Mackie or Sam Wilson. Mackie is a charismatic actor and Wilson a likable character. But Captain America, Steve Rogers that is, he's a pop culture icon for a reason. Let's say they decide to make a Dark Knight Rises sequel tomorrow, but with Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the main role. Sure, it could end up being good, but it wouldn't generate nearly the same level of interest or excitement as if Christian Bale were returning. Even if you make Batman retire and put Robin in the Batsuit, people are still going to prefer to see Bruce Wayne. It's kind of the same case here. That's not to say it couldn't have worked. It's all in the execution and how a story is told. There's no reason that a story about a prodigy taking over a mantle couldn't be compelling. Into the Spider-Verse did something along these lines, and it managed it with flying colors. As for the performances, everyone here does a solid job. Harrison Ford, shockingly, doesn't just phone it all in like I expected, and Mackie tries to bring gravitas and weight to his scenes. But all these characters lack a real emotional or personal connection to make it all click. A few scenes with Isaiah Bradley are the only real times where the movie finds an emotional pulse. Sam is given little development besides trying to prove that he is worthy of the Captain America name. It's a fairly mundane character arc when even compared against his own TV show. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of Falcon and the Winter Soldier either, as I found it far too scattershot and unfocused. The episodes felt less like a satisfying show and more like a movie that had been broken up into 6 parts. But at least it had an interesting arc for Wilson, with him choosing to take up the mantle. As lukewarm as I was on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it feels like an inspired masterpiece compared to this. There at least feels like there is something going on. Also, can someone explain to me how a television show from like 3 or 4 years ago looks visually better than this multi-million-dollar movie? When it's not engaged in half-baked, poorly choreographed action sequences, it turns into just an outright cartoon, with some of the worst CGI of the entire cinematic universe. But let's get to the nitty-gritty here. So, it's not the lackluster thriller elements, not the performances, not the villains or the dead pacing, and it's not even the bad CGI. No, the true missing ingredient here is a sense of sacrifice. Sacrifice is what made Steve Rogers' trilogy so impactful. Every movie had a bittersweet ending that was neither really happy nor sad. It captured the feeling that something was really lost to achieve victory. In the first Avenger, Steve manages to defeat Red Skull, but in the process, he ends up frozen in ice for 100 years and loses the love of his life. In Winter Soldier, he exposes Hydra and frees his buddy from mind control, but he actually kind of loses his fight against Winter Soldier, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is completely destroyed. At the end of Civil War, he stops Iron Man from killing his friend, but as a result, the Avengers are broken up and half of them become fugitives. All of these movies have a sense of tangible loss. It made each film feel like it had weight, and made the wider audience wonder, where do we go from here? It sets stuff up in interesting ways.
When do we start?
We just did.
Brave New World doesn't have any of this. The story feels like an anti-Captain America movie. Instead of opening doors and leaving a lasting impression, this movie exists more to close doors and wrap up loose ends. And it's not even doing that with well-loved movies. I'm a big Incredible Hulk defender who thinks it did a solid job of adapting a classic Hulk fugitive story, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't largely met with a lukewarm response. Eternals had an even worse reception as the first negatively reviewed MCU movie, so naturally, the powers that be decided Brave New World should mostly be a sequel to Incredible Hulk and the Eternals, which, that's a choice. Most of the movie feels as if it had been written for the Hulk as the main character, but instead he's been swapped out for the Falcon. After all, the two villains, they're perhaps Hulk's biggest enemies, and it is directly continuing plot threads from his one and only solo movie. And he is the only one who actually has relationships to most of the supporting characters. At the very least, this movie would have been greatly strengthened had Banner been there as a supporting character. And Falcon can be a little thin on iconic comic arcs and villains, so it's understandable for them to pull from other sources. But in a Captain America movie, it would have been more fitting to have them draw from a Captain America story or his pantheon of characters. Zemo is still sitting in the waiting room, a character well liked by most fans who is mostly a behind-the-scenes villain in Civil War and a secondary supporting character in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Put him front and center. All I can think is poor Daniel Brühl, okay? Left out of both a Captain America film and the Thunderbolts in the same year. And the Thunderbolts in the comics? That's his team. Perhaps there were real stakes at some point. Brave New World underwent massive reshoots to make it to the big screen. It originally started as a film titled New World Order, before being pushed back endlessly from 2024 to 2025, and then completely retitled. Early test screenings were largely negative, which resulted in a massive retooling of the film. And oh man, can you tell, from sequences that feel just shoehorned in to conversations that are some of the worst green screen of two characters talking to each other. They're probably not even in the same room. And then you've got scenes that are half finished with CGI and just really just lackluster choreography. You can also see the remnants of a forgotten film in the graveyard of marketing material. The leader gets a complete redesign, and Tim Blake Nelson had to reshoot all his scenes with very noticeable green screen and makeup that looks like something out of Doctor Who. An especially egregious scene comes right before the final fight, where you see the blurred blending on the character's edges. And then there is the newly introduced Sabra, whose role was greatly reduced. Marketing material showed her fully suited up, but I guess all those scenes must have ended up on the cutting room floor, because we never see her in costume. More damningly, there were reports that Thaddeus Ross originally had a much stronger Donald Trump parallel. Marvel lost confidence in this original vision, maybe for the better, but it feels like it could have been for a whole lot worse. It's possible the test screenings went so poorly just due to the film being released in a highly political election year. It's easy to understand people not really wanting more political-based media. Or maybe Marvel chose to cut it all out just to be less divisive and not split a fan base over partisan critique. In doing so, though, they may have completely neutered this film, making it completely toothless in the process. Perhaps the original was more of a blunt political instrument, but at least that would be something. By the end, Brave New World left me mostly thinking, that's it? I kept waiting for the movie to find its rhythm and kick into gear, but It never really did. The closest it got was during a sequence with the Eternal Celestial. But even here, the issue is resolved, and then the film just goes back to its normal monotone and pivots into the third act. There's nothing really here all that gripping, and nothing that makes it stand out. And it certainly has no ending that leaves a lasting impression. It's a shell of wasted potential that, like Sam Wilson, will, unfortunately, be unfavorably compared to what has come before.
This is boring.
But that's all I have on this. Let me know what you thought of Brave New World. Sorry you can't see my preface this time. I am on the road for my day job. I will be back in front of the camera again soon. But until then, keep those reels turning. Thank you.